Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 264. Everyone I know who is having success in film right now is there because of persistence. Jay Duplass.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my Indie Film Hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by Soundstripe. Now, Soundstripe is a music licensing website that allows you to download unlimited music for your latest projects. And once you download it, it is yours for life. You can use the music for feature films, short films, YouTube, you name it. And they charge just a fraction of the cost of what a normal stock music library would be. You can sign up for a monthly or a yearly subscription. And if you want to get 10% off your yearly subscription, just enter the code IFH and go to soundstripe.com. Today's show is also sponsored by Streamlet.com. Streamlet is a unique streaming service that is dedicated to indie films and watching the latest indie films. So if you guys want to see what other filmmakers are doing with low budget, no budget, micro budget films, then Streamlet is for you. These are real indie films, not Hollywood indie films playing as independent films. And if you are a filmmaker who has a short or feature film that needs distribution and you want to get in front of an audience, Streamlet is also for you. You can also upload your films there as well. And exclusive to the IFH tribe, you get a coupon code HUSTLE2018 to get a monthly subscription for just $2.99. That's Streamlet.com. So, my Indie Film Hustlers, today I have on the show Jamie Adams, who is the director of the new film All Right Now, starring the lovely Cobie Smulders, who we had on the show earlier in the week. And as promised, Jamie is on the show today to reveal all of his secrets on how, first of all, how he got Cobie to be in his small budget, improv-based film being shot across the world over in England. And I wanted to also talk to him about his process of how he casts, how he works with actors, how he develops a scene, how he writes the project, how he covers the project technically with cameras, what he's doing, one camera, two camera, what's his whole process like, because I've had my experience, obviously, with my first two films, This Is Meg and On the Corner of Ego and Desire, shooting in a very similar style. And I know how I do it, but I wanted to hear how he does it. And he's been doing it longer than I have. He's done about 4 or 5 features, plus tons and tons of shorts. So, and he really has embraced this improv style of filmmaking. And the one thing I also wanted to say, and I say it a little bit in the show, but you know, there is not one way to make a movie. You know, Hollywood and film schools teach you that this is the only way to make a movie. But if you look at the masters in painting, you throw a canvas, paint, and a brush, and you give it to Van Gogh, Dali, and Pollock. You're going to get very different styles, very different ways of doing the exact same thing, putting paint on canvas. And there is no reason why filmmaking can't be that way as well. So without any further ado, please enjoy my enlightening conversation with Jamie Adams. I'd like to welcome to the show Jamie Adams, man. Thank you so much for being on the show, brother.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.
You are you're in London at the moment, correct?
No, I'm in a small coastal town called Porthcawl, which is near Cardiff in Wales.
Nice. You see that I know nothing about what you just said because I'm here in Los Angeles. I just know
that explains. Yeah,
that explains everything. Exactly. It's like if I told you, yeah, I'm in Burbank over here by this corner in the valley. You're just like, I don't understand.
Yeah, but at least I know what Los Angeles is.
You know what Los Angeles is.
You don't even know my country.
I know barely enough. I am a typical American. I apologize.
No worries. It's expected. It's fine. When I say Wales to people, they go, "Oh, that's London, right?"
No, it's not. I know that much. I do know that it's not.
Oh my God.
It's London.
It's Britain. It's next door to England.
Yes, of course. Anyway, so I wanted to get started. How did you get into the business, man?
I'm not really in the business.
You just make movies on the side?
I essentially just started. God, Jesus Christ! I'm 38 now. I guess I went to film school when I was 18 in London, Royal Holloway University of London, and met a fantastic filmmaker there called Gideon Koppel. And Gideon made a really just fantastic award-winning documentary, I think about 10 years ago now, called Sleep Furiously, which, as an aside, you should check out because it's absolutely just a beautiful, beautiful film. And he was just kind of looking at my short films and going, looking at the way I was working with crew and cast and whatever, and I was getting quite frustrated as a 18, 19-year-old. And he said that perhaps, I was getting too attached to what I had going on in my head in terms of the way in which I would visualize what it is that I wanted. And I was getting frustrated with people because they weren't able to do what I wanted them to do. So he said, maybe you want to find a different approach to making your films. And at that point, I'm from a very small town in South Wales. So I would just go to the video store and see like all the police academies and Back to the Future, all very sort of commercial comedy type stuff, really.
Now you speak of video stores. What are those?
It's kind of like iTunes.
It's like iTunes and Netflix, right?
Into it, and you see all of the covers around you.
No, stop it! You're making this up. You're making this up. I don't believe it.
I know, it sounds ridiculous. And you get to take it actually physically home with you and study. Anyway, it's ridiculous.
And you get feed, and you get, if you don't rewind, you get charged.
Not in Britain. They were just happy if you returned it in Britain.
Nice. So good to know.
It was. I've still got a couple. Anyway, we won't talk about that.
Sorry.
But yeah, so I just said to him, look, this is what I'm into, and he said, okay, well, maybe you need to be watching some other things, and so he introduced me to Mike Leigh, the work of Mike Leigh, and Peter Greenaway, because Peter Green is from Newport, which is in Wales, and so yeah, I kind of I stopped going to lectures really, and just started watching. Wake up and start watching as many films as I possibly could, playing catch up with the rest of the people that were on the course that already knew about all these great movies, and the European cinema as well, in terms of like French New Wave and all that kind of stuff. And I started to appreciate that there's not that one way of making a film. Like whenever you see any kind of movie as a kid, like whether it's Jurassic Park or Back to the Future or Pulp Fiction, whatever, you always think, oh, there's a way that you go about doing this that is the same, because that's how you direct as a job. And then I think I just kind of learned that that's not the truth of it. The truth of it, it's very much an expression, an individual expression, and that's where the real great movies come from, whether they're commercially minded movies or whether they're artistic expressions. Sorry, bear with me. I just realized you are all now realizing I'm in my laundry room on Skype on the podcast.
Well, that's why it sounds so fantastic.
So let me go and turn that off. I will be thanking my wife for leaving that on. But anyway, yeah. So as I was, so I went and looked at all this stuff, and that's when I started to appreciate that really it wasn't about trying to be like these other great filmmakers. It was about finding my own voice, and so that's where the improv started to come from. I started to realize I really loved working with actors, specifically spending a lot of time with actors, talking about the stories that I wanted to tell and making them more and more involved in the creation of these stories. And the one thing I've discovered actually over the last couple of years is that I feel that Mike Leigh's a bit disingenuous because he then goes away and he writes the script and then they follow the script. And that confused me then and confused me now when I've got actor friends who work on his films. It doesn't, if you're going to start with a collaboration where everybody's really kind of invested in their character and invested in creating the story, it just felt like to me that you just carry that on into the, and I didn't know quite how to do that. And so as the years go on, and I worked as an assistant editor. This is a really long-winded answer.
No, please, that's okay. Well, let me ask you, as far as, because I come from an editing background as well. How did it help you transition from being an editor to being a director? Did it help you? How did that help?
Yeah, it really helped. I mean, this is the thing, is I kept on making these short films, trying to figure out how I was going to use this sort of using the improv method that I had learned from watching the Mike Leigh films and from hearing from people like Dominic Savage over here. And I had time because I was able to be involved in seeing these incredible editors put together. I mean, I worked on State of Play, which was a Kevin MacDonald movie, and Justine Wright. They were like an Oscar-winning documentary team who were making this film with like Russell Crowe, and who else was in that? I think Ben Affleck was in it. And it was this huge film, and I'm in there in the edit, and I'm 23, 24. And it was just, I was able to be a part of these environments where I wasn't being bossed around on set, because I did try being a camera assistant for a bit, and it was the most awful experience of my life. I realized the only time I ever want to be on set is if I'm the director.
Yes, that's generally the best place to be. As a director, I agree with you 100%. I hated PA work. I could not stand doing PA work.
I mean, you've really got to want to be like work your way up to be a cinematographer or something. Like to do that kind of work, I don't understand how they do it. I didn't last very long, and I ended up going into the cutting room, and that's where I discovered that I could do a job as the assistant editor, which it really is a specific kind of data orientated job, really. And that suited me, because then I could still be having these great conversations with directors and editors that I had no right to being able to be involved in. But because you're in the edit suite and it's much calmer there,
it's much calmer.
you just get to have lovely conversations with incredible creative people that are making things that you want to go and make. And the one thing they kept saying was just keep going, just keep writing and making the short films on the side. So that's what I did every year. I'd find the right people and have the money to go and make these. I say have the money. I mean, they only ever cost about 50 quid or whatever, but you go and shoot the movies on DV. And I think I just happened across something when I started to go into teaching, because my wife and I got married and very young, actually. And we were about 25. And then we had our first child at 26. And I was like, well, that's it then. I better make sure, I'm a working class lad. I don't have money in the bank. My parents can't pay for me. I need to work a living out here. So I became a teacher, lecturing in film studies. And I was acting out a role, really, because I wasn't ever really fully invested. I just wanted to be making the things that I was asking them to go and make. And so that was another jolt of, you're on the wrong path now. Like, you're on the right path now. You haven't made, I didn't make a short film for 3 years. My wife could see I was getting a bit depressed, and she just went, okay, enough. You have to go make a film. And when I say go make a film, I don't mean this European finding your soul kind of movie. What did you love?
The Seven Seal?
Yeah, because that's the thing is that ultimately she was like, I'm happy for you to go be a filmmaker, but please, what did you love when you were younger? Because that might lead you to a place where you might make some money out of this. And
she's very wise, by the way, very wise.
Well, she's still waiting, but ultimately,
mine too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, always waiting, but I was like, of course I love comedy, and I love, she's like, well, go do a comedy. And I was like, well, okay, this is where the improv could work, because I think I know what's funny. Like, I'm pretty confident in my knowledge of what is funny, but to actually sit down and write, I mean, I've got so many friends that actually, they're great comedians, and they sit down and they write, and I'm just in awe of them. I have no idea how they're able to, I know kind of stories I want to tell that might be funny or whatever, but to actually get the joke out of that, to actually get the punchline out of that is an incredible skill, and something I don't have. So what I did have is I was like, well, I think I know what situations could be funny. So I just started at that point then of, okay, forget this European cinema stuff, but use the improv nature of working with actors. And if you get the right cast and put them in the right situations, then together you should be able to, if Jamie's laughing, then hopefully that means it's going to be funny to other people. And so that's where the first feature film I did came from, which must have been about 5 or 6 years ago now. I can't really remember. It should have been a short film. Like, literally, the cast that got involved thought it was a short film.
That's always the best.
It was so funny, though, because I remember Craig Roberts, who was, he's from Wales, and at the time, he'd done the film Submarine, Did you see that film? The Richard
yeah,
Ayoade?
yeah. I've heard of it, but I've not seen it.
Oh, he was so good in it, and so I had no right having him in my film, but he literally told his agent, "It's a short film. We don't need to worry about this." And like we're on set, and we're only shooting for 5 days. This seemed to be the thing that I thought that if I had £12,000, I could go make a film in 5 days, and we would be able to give people at least quiche for lunch.
At least,
like,
at least. At least
that, maybe
some gas money, maybe
a Coke as well. Yeah, exactly, and some petrol. But and then I just got loads of really great, enthusiastic graduates, mostly, to be in the crew.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from my DOP, who I still work with now, and we just started to amble along from. I made like the worst choices. It was like, okay, so we've only got 5 days. So what I want to do is I'm going to start in London, then I'm going to travel to Cardiff.
Sure.
Then I'm going to travel from Cardiff into North Wales, and then back to Cardiff. And they're looking at me going, "You're just going to be on the road most of the time. You're not actually going to be shooting much."
Right.
And I was, no, because we're going to carry on filming whilst we drive. And they're like, "Well, that's against the law." I'm like, "Well, no, that's what we're going to do. It's going to be fine." And literally, the first time we set off we were not in an RV. We couldn't afford an RV. Right. In Britain, we have these really small motorhomes. Mm-hmm. They're like, think of the smallest caravan you can ever think of. It's basically that on wheels.
Right.
And we got a couple of those, and we were just setting off. Just before we were just setting off, just literally the camera guy, my DOP Ryan, literally was just getting a shot of us pulling away, and he steps on a rusty nail.
Oh!
And then a couple of the older heads in the cast, they were panicking. They were like, no. Well, now what happens is you go straight to hospital and you get a jab. And Ryan was like, "No, I'm fine. I can just wipe the blood away. It's no problem."
Oh, no.
And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm all about like guerrilla filmmaking, mate, but I don't want you to die.
I don't want your foot to fall off by the end of this film."
Yeah, like I'm not sure this is a good idea, but he just carried on. And then when I was like, "Yeah, we're gonna shoot now, guys. So don't get up and move around, because obviously it's a moving vehicle, but we're going to carry on shooting you whilst, you're talking in the motorhome." And literally the oldest cast member that was with us, just as soon as we were about to turn over, he went, "No, stop. No, there's going to be no filming whilst we're driving." And I was like,
Jesus.
I was like, there goes the film.
And this is your first film in this style.
It was the first film in this style. We literally had 10 pages of scenes that I thought I needed to get to tell the story, and already I was being told that like half of what I had, which is essentially I find it hilarious. Like all journeys I think are funny for various reasons, and due to like anxiety reasons probably for me, and I always imagine the worst is going to happen, that kind of thing, and so everyone's trying to keep everyone busy. So I thought that was a fun thing to try and capture. But he wouldn't allow that to happen. It's
funny that, I mean, I've had some experience with that, but generally everybody I get on board with my films, they're all on board. They're like, we're all going on this crazy journey. I never had an actor stop me, but I have had conversations with people who just don't understand what we're doing. And I'm assuming you have to have, because it's just not the way you officially make a movie. You need to do things a certain way according to the dogma of filmmaking. But when you like my last film I shot at the Sundance Film Festival, like I literally ran around the festival and shot a whole movie, a narrative.
Oh my God, that's incredible. That was actually one of the ideas I had a couple of years ago, but mine was South by Southwest, because that's why I've had experience though. Right.
I've had experience at Sundance. So I literally ran around about 3 filmmakers trying to sell their film to a producer, and they're hunting down a producer at Sundance over 24 hours. And
that's so cool.
And I literally would talk to people, and they would just look at you with like deers in headlights, just completely blank. I'm assuming that happens over there as well.
For a minute there, I was imagining people with deer heads.
That's a whole other. That's my third movie. That's another movie.
That's a horror comedy.
That's a horror film, but yet a comedy with a musical twist. No.
let's not get into a conversation about pitching, because then it just gets ridiculous.
Oh no, can you imagine? I can only imagine. It's amazing. But I'm assuming you have this kind of process even when you're pitching actors. I'm assuming you have this issue of like, what are you doing?
Yeah, no, I mean, with the first film, it was interesting because all they had to go on my short films, and my short films were much more structured than the feature was going to be, because just naturally, obviously, you can spend 2 days on a 5-minute short film. You're going to be more structured with it. But with this first feature, I was trying to figure out how we get a feature film out of 5 days of shooting. And especially when one of the actors turns around and goes, "No, you can't do that." It becomes it became an interesting sort of thing to deal with, to be honest. And I was one of the first lessons of, not everybody, Jamie, is going to be as excited about this as you are.
It's scary.
That people that get involved initially are like, "We're going to make a movie." I think that's one of the primary things they have in their head is, we're going to make a movie. We're going to make a movie. And obviously in Britain, and especially, in this case, most of the cast were from Wales. You don't really get a chance to make films full stop. We hardly get any television programs made locally, regionally. So for them to get offered it, they were like, "Well, this is amazing. We're making a movie." And then they get there and they look around. They don't see anything that's familiar to them. So they can see the camera. That's the one thing, but the camera looks different. It's not the same camera that they're used to seeing.
Right. Correct.
And the sound guy is actually standing up and holding the boom as if it's a documentary, which is confusing to them because they're used to seeing sound recorders sat down at their mixing desk and they have their boom operator. So everything's very different. And the director's not saying, this is your mark, walk to there, turn around, say a line, that's it. So it sounds exciting, but then I realized in that first movie that, actually I think the key to making a film like this successful is to get the right cast. And so casting becomes very important, because you're not just casting for great actors that would be great for the role. You're actually casting for the way in which you're going to go about making the film. And that's that. So that was the key lesson from that first movie.
Now we'll be right back to the show in just a minute, but we got to pay some bills. So I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Blackbox. Blackbox is a new platform and community that is all about financial freedom for filmmakers like you. If you join Blackbox, you will be transformed from being a worker to being a maker of your own content. And you'll be making steady passive income from the global market. Blackbox currently allows you to upload your stock footage once, get it to many global agencies, and then allows you to share that passive income stream with your collaborators. Whether you want to submit old footage that's been sitting around in your hard drives or create brand new content, Blackbox is for you. It's really quite revolutionary. With Blackbox, filmmakers can concentrate on making great content while Blackbox takes care of all the business BS. Just visit www.blackbox.global to find out more. And now back to the show. Now, what is the process when you're developing a film? What is how does it start? How do you move forward through the whole process?
I should have a really strict answer for this, but I think that the thing is, it's different with every story, because that's the one thing I definitely don't want to do. I'm 38 now. I've been making films for a long time. And I don't want to start restricting myself. In fact, what I do is I let myself have more freedom every time. So, because it's about the story, it's about being true to the story. So, for example, I'm just about to head into a movie now, and I've been wanting to tell this story. It's a really personal story. It's one about my mum passing away when I was 19, and I haven't been able to deal with that over the course of So now I'm ready. Now I've done the comedies. I'm ready to tackle this. So I can see myself spending much more time prepping it. Like I'm being much more kind of nurturing it, being much more conscientious with it. And I think that's because it's a drama and because it's personal. And I think with the comedies, and it depends which one of the comedies it is. So, for example, with All Right Now, that was such a fun idea to come up with. I spent a bit of time back in a university environment, and I was like, I'm not really that old, but yet these students seem so alien to me about how conscientious they are, how they're all about the schedule, they're all about, are they getting enough out of their classes, I was like, I was only interested in where the party was going to be that night. And, you know, they're not really, they'll have a couple of beers, but then they know any more than that, and it's bad for you. I was just like, what? I don't understand what's going on with you. Where's all the promotion about, we've got this party going on, we've got, you know, come and join us for this social evening. And I just didn't get, and like, they're not eating pizza, they're eating, you know, kale. And I just found it fascinating that I didn't get it. And I was just like, my God, am I really that old? And then the idea of, I've met a couple of my Britpop heroes over the last sort of couple of years. And it's so funny meeting your heroes when they're not in their heyday, shall we say. Sure. And I was like, they're beautiful people, but like, why are they still doing this to themselves? They are literally compelled to, because it's their favorite thing to do. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, right, okay, this is the story. This is a fun story about a faded rock and roll star is told they have to stop and they don't want to, so they think they choose the next best thing, going to spend time at university and carrying on the rock and roll lifestyle. And again, life is telling them that, you know, it's not 1990s anymore. Things have changed, and you've got older, and you need to deal with that. And thankfully, I found the right cast. I mean,
it was a fantastic cast. It was a fantastic cast. Yeah,
that's a different thing. I prepped for that in a different way because it's such a fun thing. I let it be very much. We had the scriptment. We had the 30-page scene outline, but I was much more looking for broader comedy with it in places than I would normally do.
As the nut shot shows.
Yeah, well, there we go. Yeah, exactly. There are a couple of cliched moments in there that I thought
were awesome.
Just fun to play around with. And whereas actually something like, you know, another film of mine that's came before that called Black Mountain Poets, that's a little bit more serious because it's about sisters kind of figuring out how they're going to move on with their lives without being so connected. So it's a little bit more dramatic. And so, yeah, I was a little bit more kind of focused on what I definitely needed to do in each scene. Whereas with All Right Now, I really loved the idea that Cobie would come up with just such great sort of moments and looks and ideas. And I was just like, you've got to follow that. You've got to let that happen.
Let me ask you a question. How do you work with actors on the set? What is the process of like shooting a scene? So people who are completely foreign to the way that you're doing this, how would you approach a scene with a group of actors?
Oh God, again, that changes with each scene. But I imagine on All Right Now, because that's what we're talking about.
Yes,
it's a case of there's lots of different personalities going on as well within the cast, and so it's I like to approach a scene in, you know, keeping the individual in mind. So you look at who's leading the scene in a way, and to be honest, in All Right Now, it's pretty much always Joanne. It's pretty much always Cobie. Mm-hmm. So me and Cobie would just walk around the set, as it were, the location, and we would to have a brief discussion, as much as she would need to. I never lead it. It's as much as she would need to talk about what she thinks I wanted this scene to be. Mm-hmm. And then I will, you know, agree or maybe bring up something else that was on my mind about this scene when I was thinking about it. And then she'd go, okay. And then she'd kind of have her own thoughts about how she thought it was going to play out. But we don't really talk about that too much. I always just kind of go, I want to see it. I want to, you know, let's play it out. That's why we've got this whole freedom to be able to do what I call the first pass, where anything's allowed, where it's open. It's absolutely, as long as you're listening to the other actors, as long as you're being considerate of everyone that's in the scene, and then it works really well to just let that first pass just happen. All of us knowing, because I've had the individual chats with all of the lead people within that scene, about what I feel it is for their character, perhaps whatever they need from me that they want to know. And then we play it out. And I love it before they go into a scene, because invariably, if they haven't worked with me before, they'll go, oh, but I've got to talk about my dad in this scene. What do I know about my dad that's going to be important for this story in this scene? And I'll be like, well, you'll show me. You know, like, we'll play the scene. you'll know you've got to tell a story about your dad, and you will start telling a story. And then if I feel it's not at all appropriate, then I'll say, hold it there, roll it back, give me another one.
Right.
And there's no time to overthink it. I never want there to be too much time because an actor has always been told to be prepared, always learn your lines, always know exactly what the scene is, where you're meant to be, where you're going to head. Okay, so I start here, I walk there, I turn around, whatever. I'm just like, I'm not interested in any of that phony, theater. It's filmed theater, essentially, a lot of movies. And that's fine. And I love movies, so that's not a problem. But for me, I feel like I want there to be a frisson. I want there to be an energy that you rarely see.
It's very true.
Which some people call messy, but that's because they're relating it to film theater. So in that case, it probably is messy because life is messy. What I'm capturing is an element of, life in its most real form in a way. And I hope, whether they're comedies, whether they're dramas, whatever, that's essentially what we're setting up here, because I'm not dictating too much of what's going on in front of the camera. I'm guiding. So once we see the first pass and we heard a couple of whatever it is, the beat of the moment, we've seen how that's played out. We've got the joke, whatever normally there's like 10, if it's a comedy, there's like lots of different things flying about from different characters, different actors. And then in the next pass, we start to kind of mold it into a more, what we would then consider to be more and more like a scene that we would see play out in other sets.
Now,
things are more, structured.
Now, how many cameras do you use generally to cover your scenes?
Well, it was interesting. I started off with 2 cameras, and I found that the B camera was always getting in the way. And so it was just, you feel like it's a time thing where I'm going to have 2 cameras because we need to move on quickly. Well, I find this actually better with single camera. And I'm generally stood right next to my DOP, and during passes, I'll be like, we've got to go in close on Cobie right now, and that was meant to be our wide, but I see something that's happening, and I'm like, well, that might not happen again, so I need to move in now.
Right.
And then I'll tell them to roll it back, and then we'll move back out again. So I don't say cut necessarily, though. I'll say roll it back, and I'll tell them where we're going back to. Then we'll come back out, and then we'll continue.
Go ahead.
No, I'll leave it there.
No. I find it that when you're working with actors like that, with this, and generally as a filmmaker as well, when you do this kind of style of filmmaking, you're kind of out there without a net. Like you're exposed in a way that is terrifying, but yet exhilarating and wonderful, because the freedom you feel as a filmmaker is something that I cannot explain with words. It is just, and I think actors, when they jump on that bandwagon, that freedom and that terror works so wonderfully. And if you can combine the two, it works wonderfully. Do you agree?
Yeah, I really want to see your films. I really want to see what's been going down with
We'll
you.
exchange information after the interview. No worries.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally. I mean, I think 1 or 2 crew members who've been with me for a couple of films feel that I revel in the chaos, that I really find a lot of it funny. And so they think that I do things like, I'll turn to the art department during a shot, during a pass, and so the camera's rolling, and I'm like, you've got to get me a trampoline right now. And they're like, Jamie. And they think I think that's funny, but it's not. I don't think it. I mean, of course, I can see it's funny when I look back. But at the time, I'm deadly serious. At the time, I'm like, I've had a great idea. They're in the house, say, and I want to get them out of the house onto a trampoline, and carrying on the same moment, and that would just be funny,
right?
And naturally funny because they're trying to have a conversation on a trampoline. Because this is what happens in everyday life. I've got 3 kids, and you try and have a serious chat with them, and all of a sudden they start doing something else, and it's just like. You can't help but get involved in the comedy of it all.
Yes, it's infuriating.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. So anyway, I think I don't think it is. I don't think it's without a safety net. I think for me, it's the natural way of making films. For me,
that's excellent. Right.
That's it.
No, I mean, yeah, because if you look at it from the normal way of, or the dogmatic way of making films, it is working without a safety net. The safety net is the script. It is the full blown screenplay. And again, there are those places for those kind of films. But for me, I love it out there. It's just, I love being out there on the edge. It's because you don't know what's going to happen next, which is something, generally as a filmmaker, you kind of been taught that you need to know what happens next. But that's where the excitement is. And that's where the magic is. So I always say I'm there to capture the magic.
Absolutely, but they all know that. I mean, as in every storyteller that kind of does any kind of, even a guy down the bar telling a story, they know it's the bits that they start to go off track where they're making stuff up. Where, they start off with a real story and then they're just like, okay, this isn't getting as much interest as I wanted, so I'm going to go off track a little bit. And then they're feeling a bit of the energy of what it is to be involved in improvisation. Where they're just like, they're going, what am I going to say next? What am I saying next? Whilst they're saying what they're saying. And if it lands, then that's the best thing in the world, that they're the hero, that they've just created something out of nothing. And in fact, that's what any art is you are creating something out of nothing, whether that's a planned situation or not. I mean, look at I was talking to somebody the other day about where they were in, I won't say which actor it was, but they were in The Mummy, and obviously massive studio movie and whatever. And they were saying that, Brendan Fraser wasn't too chuffed with learning lines. So it was a case of, and this, I don't know if this is true, by the way.
Sure.
So Brendan Fraser, please do not try and sue me. I was literally some kind of example of many situations in which blockbuster movies still have this magic. They still have this element of people going down their own path. And I think, in fact, forget Brendan Fraser, that's Al Pacino, that's Bill Murray, that's Meryl Streep. That's any great actor will always bring a lot of themselves and a lot of their thoughts and ideas and whatever else during moments. So of course they might be sticking to lines that they're meant to be sticking to, but they're bringing something new and different. And sometimes they won't stick to lines; they'll do something else. And I think that's where the great moments come from. And it's kind of funny that when you look at top. Your top sort of film moments over the years, they've been improv. Yeah, a lot of the times they're improvised.
Well, I'll give you a better example too, or another example. Iron Man. Iron Man was, a lot of that was improvised, to the point where Jeff Bridges came out like we were making $100 million indie movie, because we would just show up on the set. It was me, Robert, and John, the director, John Favreau, Robert Downey Jr., and Jeff Bridges. We'd like sit around before we shot and like wrote out scenes and wrote out dialogue. And I'm like, I can't see, at that point, it's one thing to do this on a small budget, but when you're at the $100 million point, you got to roll a little bit differently. So it was fascinating to hear that story.
No, I disagree. I don't. I mean, hopefully I get to keep making bigger and bigger movies.
Oh, agreed.
Just to have more resources, but I don't necessarily think that will change. I love the fact that was it recently with Jeff Goldblum and was it Thor?
Oh, Thor! There was a ton of that in Thor. You could see it.
I mean, you just got to be a confident director, confident in terms of, but that has to mean it has to be right for you. So whatever it is that you're confident with, like for example, Hitchcock was obviously very confident with his storyboards.
Fincher as well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's no one way of how this works. It's all very much an expression, and that's where the best movies come from, is when you're able to be in your comfort zone and tell films with your own voice, and that's what I've been able to do so far.
You know what's fascinating is I've never thought about it this way, but if you look at the masters of painting, of just painting. Jackson Pollock was Jackson Pollock. Van Gogh was Van Gogh. Monet was Monet. They all had their unique way of telling their story on canvas. It was paint.
Yeah, with the same materials.
Same, exactly. Paint, canvas, and an idea. Yeah. But they did it differently. And I think what we've been taught for so long is that you have to make a movie the same way. You have to do A, B, C, and D to make a proper movie, when that's not the case with art. Same thing with music and so on.
It's the truth, but that's what takes me back when you say, where did it all begin and whatever else. It's like, that's when you get into this business and whatever, which is an interesting term as well, which I'll always struggle with. But it is the truth of it.
Yeah.
But it is that lecturer is Gideon Koppel, the filmmaker lecturer who he was trying to just make me understand. I remember when he said the words, "You need to find your voice." I was like,
yes.
"Oh, you pretend? How pretentious are you? What are you talking about?"
I know,
I'm pretty
right?
sure no one told Tarantino to find his voice. It's like you make films, and
that's hilarious.
And then I completely, as soon as I got into my groove, into the way in which I like to make films, I was like, okay, I found my voice. Well done. You were right. You were right, sir.
Now I have to ask one question that filmmakers listening will die if I don't ask. How the hell did you get Cobie Smulders in your film?
Given away a lot of secrets. So
you have. I mean, you don't have to give exact details, but like, and by the way, everyone, because we just said, you and I were both saying Cobie Smulders is the star of all right now, who is in obviously some of the biggest movies of all time with the Avengers and Captain America and all those kind of films. I just want to know at what point did you go, I'm going to pick up the phone and call Cobie's agent? How did it work? How did you do it?
It's funny, because even before All Right Now, I did 3 other films before that, and in the as I said, in the first movie, Craig was in there, and people were like, how did you get him? In the second one, it was Laura Haddock, who is in the Transformers movie recently, like the last Transformer movie. Laura Haddock was in, and she was in Guardians of the Galaxy as well.
Another small indie film, yes.
So Laura Haddock was in that, and they were like, how did you get her to come to Porthcawl and be in your film? And then again in Black Mountain Poets, we had some great British. Well, we had Alice Lowe, who I think you guys know now from Prevenge and Sightseers. But anyway, so Alice Lowe is in that. And it's always the same question. And like the answer is I'm just really honest. I think you can probably tell from this podcast. I'm pretty honest and open as a person. I'm not trying to do a deal. I'm not trying to.
You're not LA.
Yeah, I'm in a small town in Wales. I am literally like. I just love making films. This is how I make them. I would love you to come and join me to make this next one. And this is how much fun I think it will be. And, you've got to do your research. You've got to be able to, in fact, I remember Cobie saying to me, I think it was like the 3rd day of the shoot. She's like, oh, you're like some of my husband's friends where you literally spend all your time like knowing what's going on in the film world. And I was like, I don't see it that way. Actually, I am always on IMDb. I am always that's, you need to be really, to kind of know, to appreciate what's going on out there and what opportunities exist. And, it's not hard to discover if somebody like Cobie Smulders really wants to try new things. They're pretty open in interviews about stuff that they would like to do. And I stumbled across the fact that, she was looking to make something in England and to do something completely different. And that's what the film offered. The idea of making a feature film in a week, improvised in Cornwall, in a small area of England. It was just like, my God, this is insane. That I have to do this. I'm not going to get offered this again, sort of thing.
Right, and that's I've heard the same story from a lot of other directors when I ask them how they got some big stars. Is you offer them something that they're not being offered, something that they want to do, something that excites them and challenges them in a lot of ways if they're looking for that. Yeah,
it's definitely not for everyone. And believe me, I've approached many people that it's not for them. But that's a great honesty from their part. To be honest, it would be terrible. It wouldn't be great for anybody if somebody was like, "Oh, this is different. I'll go and do it," without really investing themselves in really thinking about what story we're telling, whether it's the right tone for them, whether it's all of that kind of stuff. And I could tell from Cobie's independent movies that she was always looking for interesting characters to play and interesting ways of doing that. And I think for us, it was the fact of playing such a character like Joanne. Normally that's your Will Ferrell's of the world, Normally that's your leading comedy man. And we just liked the idea that it was, Joanne was this kind of she had similar issues to, like, somebody's like, did you write that for a woman in mind or whatever? And I'm like, I don't understand really what the actor brings, that sort of femininity with them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the actor brings that with them anyway. So I'm not going to change how I write the character. I mean, men and women experience the same things, just in slightly different ways. And that's not something that I need to write, because I'm not writing a screenplay. I'm writing scenes. I'm writing, situations. I'm writing situations. And so it was a great exploration of, like, when we said she was going to get drunk at the bar and cause a scene, how does that work for a woman? And it was very similar to how it worked for a man, but in a slightly, but when she jumped on his back, it was like, okay, that's a new thing. That's a woman thing to do. So we discovered it together. It wasn't ever do this. I'm never like that. I'm like, look, this is what we're doing here, and we'll see where it goes. And she was just incredible in the way in which she threw herself into it, quite literally. But
that's awesome. Well, I mean,
how do you get to people? Just be honest, be passionate about your project, and go to their agents. Don't be afraid of agents and managers and whatever. They're all trying to make the best work. That's all anyone really wants to do, or do something that's different. So
right. Well, I mean, I love the film, and I will put links to the film and where people can get it on our show notes. Now, I have a few questions I ask all of my guests. Okay. What advice would you give a filmmaker wanting to break into the business today?
Don't think of it as a business.
Good answer.
Start.
Okay.
That's probably it.
Okay. Can you tell me what book had the biggest impact on your life or career? I know these are.
No, I'm joking. That was definitely Rebel Without a Crew.
Of course. Rodriguez. Yes. What an amazing.
Which I lent to a friend of mine at university, never got back, but I remembered it. I remember many parts of it.
It's that's that book. You read it and you just I read it in college and I was just in awe of it. Now, what lesson took you the longest to learn, whether in the film industry or in life?
To be grateful for where you are now and the opportunities that exist for you in that moment.
Mm-hmm. To be in the now is basically
you're always trying to be in the future. Yeah. You're always trying to be ahead of yourself. Like, I'm going to be this next year. I'm going to do this next year. I'm going to do that. It's like, well, just be thankful for where you are and what you're able to do right now. That's be present.
Because next year is not guaranteed for anybody.
No,
not
exactly.
At all. Now, what are 3 of your favorite films of all time?
It changes daily, which is probably what everyone says. But right now, off the top of my head, it would be Abu Dusuf, which is Breathless by Godard.
Yes.
La Haine, which is the Matthew Kassovitz film with Vincent Cassel. Just because the humor really in that film, and just, oh my God, there's so many incredible exploration of filmmaking in that movie as well.
Vincent's amazing.
And then what am I going to choose? Oh my God, this is too hard. Probably just, oh God, Stardust Memories.
Oh, that's a great movie. That's a great movie.
Yeah, no, I mean, how could it's so funny in places, and so just obviously a great satire on what it is to be a filmmaker, but then also the fact that it's a complete rip off of 8.5, and then and doesn't really care about that, and then also you have this moment with Charlotte Rampling, and it's just like, what now? How you just decided to just start jump cutting her face, her expressions, and that was completely fine, and yeah. So it was also made during the year of my birth, so I think that's probably part of it as well. And
is there anywhere online that people can follow you and follow your work?
I don't like people following me. I mean, we generally call that stalking in Britain. So I try to stay away from that as much as possible.
Fantastic then.
I mean, just go find my films. You'll have fun with them.
All right, Jamie, man, thank you so much for being so honest and candid with us, and dropping some knowledge bombs on the tribe today, man. I truly appreciate it.
No worries, mate. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
I want to thank Jamie for being on the show and sharing his process on how he makes films, and I hope it inspires you guys as well to just grab a camera and go out and tell your story. Don't think that you have to do it the way that everybody else does it. Don't think you have to do it the way that film schools tell you or that books tell you or anything like that. There is many different ways to skin that cat, and you just got to find the way that makes sense for you guys. Hitchcock, like we said, Hitchcock has his way. Fincher has his way. Nolan has his way. Spielberg has his way, and the Duplass brothers have their way, and so on. So there's not one single way to make movies and tell stories. So find that one for you, and I hope Jamie inspired you guys to go out and find that way for yourself. And also don't forget to check out his latest movie, All Right Then. That will be available on iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, and everywhere else you can rent or buy your films digitally online. And it comes out September 9th, next Tuesday. I'll leave a link to that at the show notes at indiefilmhustle.com/264. And that's the end of another episode, guys. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for all the support. I truly appreciate it. I hope I have been of value and service to you guys today on your filmmaking and or screenwriting journey. And as always, keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.